What's up, guys? Welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about should we be cold calling the do not call list. All right. So I'm going to make this very simple. If you don't want to watch the whole video, I'm just going to give you my answer right up front. Absolutely not. Do not call the do not call list. All right. Now, the rest of the video is going to be my explanation why. And I'm going to get into even more details as to why you should not be cold calling at all. All right. Now, here's the thing. The majority of the time, the reason why you're doing one of the most difficult forms of lead generation, which is cold calling, is because you're tight on budget. You're tight on funds. And so you're like, well, I could cold call myself. And the only expense that I'm really going to be incurring is data and skip tracing that data. And then maybe if you really want to get wild and crazy, a dialer. Okay. Now, some people are still just dialing from their cell phones or from a landline or a burner phone or something along those lines. All right. So you're wanting to be, frugal with your expenses, your money, and yet you're going to contemplate getting just sued out of your ass for calling the do not call list. Like, dude, if you're short on funds, one of the quickest ways you could just bankrupt yourself in your business is by calling the do not call list. And if you think it's like, well, yeah, but if I go call these people, it's very rare that someone's actually going to sue me. And maybe I could just scrub the litigators. Okay. Let's just say you just scrub the litigators. At some point in time, someone has to become a litigator, right? Do you want to really be their first lawsuit, right? Just because you're scrubbing the litigators doesn't mean everyone else on that do not call list will not sue you. Okay. Just means they haven't yet, or we don't have the data that they have yet. All right. The other thing is that I have heard from multiple people in this industry that have said they have gotten sued. And then when they've turned over their evidence and like said, okay, here's what's happened, they've been fined for all of the calls that they placed to the do not call list. Now, where did this topic come from? Because quite frankly, we don't talk about cold calling very often here on the channel. I've been very outspoken about the fact that I don't think you should be cold calling, and I'll talk more about that here in a second. But we have our free Facebook group, The Vault, on Facebook here. And this post 20 hours ago from a man named Colin Shemp. Don't know Colin, but I appreciate the post. This is why we have the Facebook group. How we feel about the do not call list, boys. As you see, as of the moment, this reached 817 people, 68 different comments. My comment, as you can see, got quite a few reactions, 43 reactions there. I feel like the name says it all, right? The name says it. Do not call. Why is this even a conversation? Well, because the industry has kind of been loosey-goosey about this, where it's like, hey, some people cold call the do not call list and they make a ton of money. And they say, hey, if I could go out and I can make $1 million, and yeah, maybe I get sued by a couple of people and I have to pay them $10,000 or $20,000. Well, that's just a cost of doing business. And that is a mindset that you could have. Quite frankly, I had that exact same mindset for several years. Okay. But now where I am in my business and where I see the industry as a whole, I do not think that risk is worth the reward. Like, our job as a business owner is to limit liability. And so you're openly just kind of opening the doors for that risk factor to come in and be a huge headache, because it's not just about the money. It's also about the time spent communicating back and forth, hiring an attorney, having to do an investigation, all these different things. That takes time. It takes mental bandwidth that also there's a price tag attached to. Now, as you see in these 68 comments, there was a lot coming on here. I love Gene. I'm going to talk about this in a second. Hey, Gene from Speed Elite, 60 to 70% of America are on the DNC list. I don't know about that stat specifically, but the further part is that's why we do Facebook ads and PPC and YouTube ads and sell them on iSpeed Elite. Exactly. Steve Train, my good buddy, said, I must be in the minority here. We called them. Well, first, it's past tense, bro. You retired from wholesaling, okay? Two, you're always in the minority. Like, your answers are always wrong. This is why I disagree with you about everything, Steve. Yeah, why? Just because you call them doesn't mean that the person's brand new should be calling them. Okay, it's a huge risk. We see here Adam Moe. He was a guest on the Titanium Vault years ago. I've been sued for this. Even though I'm one, it's real and expensive. My advice would be not to do it. Exactly. Here's a good example. Okay. This person's made over $4 million in a fine assignment fee strictly from cold call and RVM marketing channels, all of which include the DNC. Okay. Now, I hear what Justin is saying here. Okay, he did get sued. He had to pay $12,000 and moved on with his life and the seller's life. But there is no guarantee that you're going to get the $4 million in assignments before that $12,000 hits. If we're afraid to spend $55 or $60 on a lead, are you really willing to risk that first dial costing you 12 grand? I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay. Now, several people on here say, like, I love James. He says, I feel like obeying the law and people's express preferences. I agree. I also want to point out that, like, you're cold outreaching to someone. Like, you're trying to convince them to sell you a property. And it's not like someone signs up for the do not call list and forgets about it. Like, they're doing this to avoid your phone call. Like, they don't want to talk to you. Okay, now there's a chance that they did it, life change, huge motivating factor, and they don't care, and they're excited that you called. There's that chance as well. Again, this comes down to your personal risk preference. I just think nowadays, where we sit as an industry, this is unnecessary to take this risk. Scrolling down, I thought Bob McIntosh, who is in marketing, how do you feel about massive fines? And then he comes down here. I can tell you personally, I know of 9 real estate investing companies who are being sued for between $2 and $12 million for violations of the do not call list and SMS laws. I mean, that right there, it's game over. Game over. Why would we even continue having the conversation? If you know that there are companies in your industry that are being sued for $12 million, it's just not needed. There are so many motivated sellers out there nowadays that we do not need to do this. And there's better forms of marketing. This is why I say stop cold calling. Okay. Listen, even if you say, I want a cold call, we just saw it last Thursday. I went live with Aaron Bevins, and he has where in his program, you can buy an entire team that is going to handle the cold calling for you. They're going to go pull the data. They're going to skip trace it. They're then going to scrub it against the do not call list, the litigator list. They're going to filter it through REI Sift, cold call it for you, and then tee up these leads where you know why they're looking to sell, how much they want for it, when they're looking to sell, what the occupancy of the property is. You're going to know everything. And it costs you somewhere in the range of $55 a lead. $55. That is beyond cheap. And we're staring at, okay, we want to go do this ourselves and potentially take on this risk and this liability of calling the do not call list and being sued for $2 to $12 million. Absolutely not. And then say, all right, you just want to move away from this. You want to know how you get a hold of the motivated sellers on the do not call list? You get them through another form of marketing. One, just like Gene said, Speed to Lead, LeadZolo, Property Leads, these PPL companies, they're running Facebook ads and YouTube ads and Google pay-per-click ads. And in some cases, SEO that is reaching these motivated sellers that might be on the do not call list. And the best way to protect yourself is by getting them to come to you by opting in and saying, you are now allowed to call me. There is zero risk and zero liability in calling them at that point in time. It's just about your skill sets on solving their problems, which is what you should be focused on. Not focused on potentially avoiding litigation, trying to settle a lawsuit for $12,000 or anything else. That's ridiculous. That wears on you over the course of time. How do I know this? Because I've done it. I've made this mistake. I ignored the do not call list. And then I had people that were not on the litigator list, because that's what I was doing. I was just filtering out the known litigators, and then we were cold calling the DNC. Well, guess what? One of them got us. And guess what? They were a serial litigator. But on the litigator list, it didn't get scrubbed off. Why? I don't know. Is that going to save me from being sued? No. Same thing back in the texting days. We ignored the DNC. We ended up getting sued. It happens. Because why? I ignored what they were telling us. We ignored the laws. This is a law, people. Like, this should not even be something that we're entertaining. Just abide by the laws. And nowadays, listen, you can do PPL. You can scrub the list. It's so cold call if that's necessary. You could do direct mail. There's ways that you can still get in contact with those motivated sellers that exist on the do not call list. But putting yourself at risk is completely unnecessary. And for me personally, when I look at where we sit from an industry and where we have advanced with the technology and marketing, it's really, quite frankly, just unnecessary for us to even need to cold call. Because going back to it, if you say, hey, I could go out and I can pull this data and I'm going to spend X amount to get to a lead, a contract. Let's just say a contract. It's probably still going to cost you somewhere in the range of $400 to $500 to get to that contract on the good side. Which, if you do that with PPL, you do that with Aaron Bevan's program, you could do that on repeat, and you're not having to really worry about the headaches of pulling that data, whether or not you're putting your company at risk with the do not call list or litigator or anything like that. So quite frankly, I just think this should not even be a conversation anymore. And I want to at least let my feelings be known to the industry, like, hey, I do not agree with this. And this rumor that we have in the industry that because we are buying something and we are a buyer means they cannot sue us is not accurate at all. Okay. And that has been proven by multiple wholesale operations that have been sued, that have lost, where their attorneys have made that argument and said, we're not telemarketers, we're not selling anything, we're calling to buy. And the reason why that has been thrown out, I've got it right here. The reason why that has been thrown out is because the spirit of the law still applies, not the literal translation. So in a judge's eye, a judge is going to look at this and say, yeah, but they asked to not have a telemarketer call them. That's still what you are, even though you are a buyer and you're not selling. You're still doing telemarketing. So the spirit of the law still applies. So if you're under this mindset that you're protected because you are a buyer, you are incorrect, and you still run the risk of being sued, and it's just not worth it. You have a duty as a business owner to protect your business. Do not put it at risk because you want to be frugal with your marketing expenses. Spend the extra dollars. Get PPL. Hire a company like Aaron Bevans to go out and do cold calling the correct way for you if that's the form of marketing that you want to do. Spend the money on direct mail. Whatever you need to do, do not put yourself at risk because you see someone says, hey, I made $4 million before I got sued and it only cost me $12,000. Because the facts are you can never anticipate when that litigator is going to come after you for that $12,000. You have no idea that you are going to get to that $4 million before that happens. And the chances are right when it's going to hit you at the worst time possible. Very rarely are you sitting there and you're like, man, it's a perfect time to get sued. I've never had that. And the mental bandwidth that it takes, it's absolutely draining to go through that and hire an attorney and go through the entire process. And then, quite frankly, your attorney is going to look at you and say, well, what system do you use? Oh, I use Batch Dialer. Does Batch Dialer have where you could scrub against the do not call list and the known litigator list? Yes, it does. Did you select that you wanted to ignore that? Yes, I did. And they're going to look at you and say, yeah, you're probably going to lose. You made a real poor decision. So I beg of you today, don't make that poor decision. Protect yourself, protect your business. There's better ways to go out and run lead generation for your wholesale business. You don't need to be calling the do not call list. So what I got for you guys today, let me know what you think in the comments. If you disagree, I'd love to hear about it. If you do agree, let me know why. Make sure you give me a like on this video, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.